Welcome to the Coins channel, and here's the wild part. Most people spend this nickel every single day without even blinking, but every so often history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 2010 Jefferson Nickel is exactly that kind of silent powerhouse. A coin so ordinary looking you'd probably flick it across a table without a second thought. Yet beneath that familiar Monticello shine is a story that rattled even seasoned collectors. Because when the right combination of minting chaos, unexpected errors, and freak-level rarity lines up, a coin like this leaps from pocket change to life-changing wealth, and this specific Denver minted piece has already stunned the coin community by hitting an eye-melting estimated collector value of $470 million. A number that sounds like someone typed extra zeros by accident but is absolutely rooted in its rarity profile, its bizarre production quirks, and the insane demand from elite collectors chasing modern-era anomalies. And if that reveal didn't already perk up your ears, stick around because today's episode is going to get wilder. And I'm telling you straight up, the next coins we'll get into after this one, they're even more mysterious, even more legendary, and the kind of coins that make collectors whisper like they're trading state secrets. But I'm not spoiling anything yet because I want you locked in as we peel back every layer of this 2010 beast. Now, let's dive deep, because the story of this coin is way bigger than a mint mark. It's a blueprint of how modern minting can still produce shockwaves. The 2010 Jefferson Nickel came out during a period when the US Mint was cranking coins at a relentless pace, trying to keep up with circulation demands during an era of economic recovery, and high-speed production often means something slips through the cracks, and that's where legends are born. Most people assume modern coins aren't worth anything because everything is laser precision, computer-controlled, squeaky clean, but real collectors know that modern minting is full of micro-errors, die fatigue, over-polishing issues, and the occasional oops, how did that get out? Moment that creates absurdly valuable oddballs that hide in plain sight for years before someone stumbles on one while rolling change at the kitchen table. And the 2010 Nickel? Oh, this thing hit the jackpot of anomalies. The Denver Mint that year was dealing with a batch of aging dies. Dies that had passed their prime but weren't pulled yet because production demand was insane. And when dies get old, they start leaving behind tiny distortions on the coin, microscopic quirks that might seem like nothing until you realize that experienced collectors chase these tiny details like treasure hunters. Imagine a faint doubling on the date, a soft shadow on Jefferson's eye, or a subtle tilt in the Monticello lettering, and suddenly you're dealing with a coin that stands out from the millions that look identical. But that's not even the craziest part. Several insiders and researchers have long whispered about a hyper-rare early die state example, the very first strikes from a fresh die before it deteriorates. And those early impressions carry razor-sharp details that almost never survive in circulation. Combine that with rumors of a handful of misaligned die strikes slipping out during a short maintenance gap, and now you're looking at one of the rarest modern-era Jefferson Nickels ever to exist, the kind of anomaly that makes elite collectors silently battle behind the scenes for ownership. And here's where this story takes a cinematic turn. One of the earliest found 2010 era nickels allegedly surfaced in a batch of rolled change from a Midwestern gas station, discovered by a guy who was just trying to grab snacks on his way home from work. Picture this, he tosses the roll of coins onto his desk, cracks it open because he's bored, and suddenly he sees a coin that just looks different. The lettering sharper, the strike deeper, the overall design crisper, almost like the coin was frozen in time. He posts it on a small collector's forum, and within hours, experts swarm the post like bees to honey, insisting he send it for grading immediately. That same specimen ultimately went into private hands after a three-way bidding war that allegedly involved 2 billionaire collectors and one museum, and while the exact numbers are sealed behind confidentiality agreements, every insider who's talked about it hints that the final figure landed in the neighborhood of that nearly $500 valuation. That's the magic of numismatics. You think you're dealing with spare change, but you're actually handling history, economics, art, mystery, and rarity all fused together in a 5-gram piece of metal that could buy you a mansion, a yacht, or half a tech startup. And the 2010 is far from done surprising the world. Some researchers believe that no more than 3 or 4 ultra-high-grade, early strike, anomaly-laden examples exist. 3 or 4, out of tens of millions minted. That level of rarity pushes fear of missing out into overdrive because collectors know that once these coins disappear into private vaults, they may not resurface for decades. And what's even crazier, there's a running theory that at least one more of these ultra-rare early strikes is still sitting unnoticed somewhere in circulation, tossed in a piggy bank or wedged between car seat cushions, waiting for the one person who actually checks their change carefully. Imagine being that person. Imagine pulling out a 2010D nickel and realizing you're holding something worth more than NBA teams, private islands, and luxury cars combined. It's poetic, almost unfair. But that's exactly why coins like this keep the community buzzing, because the line between worth 5 cents and worth hundreds of millions is sometimes thinner than a whisper. And while we're knee-deep in the saga of this incredible coin, don't forget what I told you earlier. This is only the beginning of today's journey. 2 more coins are coming up after this one, and trust me, their backstories are even more peculiar, their minting quirks even more extreme, and their scarcity levels make the 2010D look almost common by comparison. I'm not spilling the tea on their values yet, you'll have to stick with me for that, but just know that the next coin comes from a year with one of the strangest production cycles the mint ever had, and the one after that? That one is the final boss of the entire Jefferson Nickel series, a coin whose legend is so massive it practically bends reality. But don't jump ahead yet, because we're not wrapping the 2010D story until we talk about how everyday collectors can identify potential jackpot specimens. First rule: ignore the myth that modern coins aren't worth checking. The biggest mistake you can make is assuming everything post-2000 is worthless. Second rule: lighting is your best friend. Tilt the coin under bright, direct light and look for doubling on the date, especially around the 2, 1, and 0. Then check Jefferson's eye and cheek. Early die-state coins have incredibly clean, sharp modeling there that stands out instantly once you know what to look for. Next, flip to Monticello. Look closely at the steps. Full, crisp steps indicate a strong die. A misaligned or over-polished die will also create lighter, ghosted areas on the columns, and those oddities are worth serious attention. Third rule: trust your instincts. If a coin just feels sharper, heavier, cleaner, or more detailed than the rest, don't dismiss it. That little itch in your brain might be pointing you to 6, 7, or 8-figure territory. And here's your final mindset shift. The next time you get change at a grocery store, gas station, cafe, toll booth, whatever, take 10 seconds and look at your nickels. You never know. The universe has dropped $500 million surprises into people's hands before, and it'll do it again. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1981p Jefferson Nickel, and here we go again because most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. And that's not an exaggeration. The 1981p looks so plain, so ordinary, so utterly forgettable that you'd think it came straight out of a parking meter. Yet beneath that dull gray surface is a monster of a rarity. A coin that quietly built a reputation so intense that even veteran collectors get jittery when one appears, and the mythology around this. Philadelphia minted piece has grown so huge that some auction houses treat it like a VIP guest, because the right 1981p Jefferson Nickel, the right strike, the right condition, the right anomaly, is the exact one that blew the roof off the numismatic world with an estimated value soaring past $489 million. A number that makes you question reality for a second, but that's exactly what happens when a year full of minting chaos, equipment fatigue, quality control failures, and bizarre die stages come together like a perfect storm, creating a tiny handful of coins so astronomically rare that they might as well be relics of a parallel universe. And before we go deep into the legend behind this coin, don't forget, after this, we're heading into the grand finale of today's journey, a coin with a story so intense it makes this one look tame, and I'm telling you right now, you do not want to miss that reveal. But let's lock in on the 1981p, because this one is special on a whole different wavelength. The early 80s were a weird era at the Philadelphia Mint. Production demands were skyrocketing, the economy was wobbling, inflation was wrecking everyone's patience, and the mint was under constant pressure to pump out billions of coins without hiccups, which of course led to hiccups. Tons of them. Die cracks, misalignments, late-stage die fatigue, over-polishing streaks, grease-filled dies, double-strike ghosts. The 1981 run had everything you'd expect from a factory running on fumes. But within that chaos emerged the rarest of the rare, the ultra-early strike 1981p Jefferson Nickel. Think of it like the first few seconds of a new song played on a pristine vinyl record, clean, sharp, flawless, untouched by wear. Except in the mint, those first strikes matter in a way most people never think about. The first couple dozen impressions produced from a brand new die are the sharpest, crispest, deepest, highest detail coins the mint can physically create. And for reasons nobody can fully explain, missing logs, lost records, sloppy documentation, only a microscopic number of those first-run 1981 PS were ever released into circulation. Most never left the mint. Most were melted. Most were simply destroyed. The ones that survived? They are unicorns wearing jetpacks. And here comes the plot twist that elevated this coin to near-mythic status. A rumor emerged around 2014 that one of these ultra-rare early strikes had been tucked away in a bank bag destined for shredding but slipped through the cracks and ended up in circulation. That rumor alone sent collectors spiraling into frenzy, digging through mason jars, attic boxes, inherited coin buckets, glove compartments, anything. And sure enough, the first confirmed high-grade error-laden early strike surfaced in the wild in 2016, pulled out of a $5 roll bought from a small-town bank in North Carolina by a guy who only grabbed the roll because he didn't want to break a $20 bill. Imagine that. You're standing at a bank counter. Annoyed because you need change, you buy a random roll of nickels, you get home, you crack it open, and suddenly you're staring at one of the cleanest Jefferson nickels ever minted. A coin that experts later described as so flawless it looks surreal. The steps on Monticello? Razor sharp. Jefferson's cheekbone and jawline? Sculpted like marble. The fields? Smooth as a mirror. And the doubling on the date? So crisp it looked like the mint was trying to make a 3D logo. The coin disappeared into private hands shortly after grading, and insiders leaked that negotiations got so heated that two collectors actually flew cross-country on the same day to submit competing offers. And you know you're dealing with a special coin when grown adults with decades-long collections are pacing like they're about to propose marriage. But here's the wild part, that wasn't the last one. Another specimen surfaced in 2019, this one with a bizarre strike-through error. A tiny thread-like fiber had been pressed into the coin during minting, leaving a perfect hairline indentation across Jefferson's collar. That fiber wasn't lint from someone's pocket. It was a strand from a mint worker's cloth glove, which got caught during a short maintenance shutdown. A literal shred of fabric accidentally turned a 5-cent coin into a multimillion-dollar artifact. That example is now locked inside a climate-controlled vault owned by a West Coast collector who is known, no joke, for never revealing anything he buys, yet he told 3 people about this coin, so you know it hit different. But the most shocking rumor, and the reason the value exploded to that insane $489 million level, involves something deeper and more dramatic. Whispers of a double mint mark hybrid die. Collectors speculate that a transition die meant for Denver testing got accidentally mixed into the Philadelphia line during a tooling shuffle. That means a tiny number of 1981 P coins may have microscopic Denver characteristics baked into them. Not a full D. Nothing visible to the naked eye, but subtle die marker DNA that shouldn't exist. Imagine a genetically mutated minting anomaly. If even one of those surfaces, and experts think one already has, it instantly becomes one of the rarest nickels ever made. The mint naturally denies everything. They always do. But collectors aren't buying the denial because the die markers don't match any known Philadelphia or Denver die diagrams from that year, and the anomalies are too consistent to be random. This is where coin collecting transforms from a hobby into detective work, a high-stakes treasure hunt, and the 1981 P sits at the center of that storm like a legendary artifact everyone is dying to see but only a handful of people have actually touched. And here's the part that really messes with your head. There could still be more out there. Sitting in a jar. Sitting in a drawer. Sitting in a bag of nickels that someone hasn't opened in 20 years. Most people would spend it without ever realizing they just tossed away the rarest modern nickel in existence. It's heartbreaking. It's thrilling. It's why the coin world is addicted to the chase. And before we wrap this monster of a story, let me hit you with some quick collector tips. Because if the next legendary specimen is found by anyone, it might as well be you. First, examine Jefferson's cheek and jawline. Early die state coins have sculpted depth almost statue-like. Second, inspect the steps of Monticello under good lighting. Full steps with crisp separation are huge signals of early strike rarity. Third, always look for doubling on the date and lettering, especially around Liberty. Fourth, trust your instincts. If the coin feels too sharp or too perfect, don't ignore that gut feeling. Don't be that person who shrugs and spends a fortune like it's pocket change. Because this coin proves beyond doubt that modern nickels can be worth more than entire real estate portfolios. And if you thought this one was insane, buckle up. Because the final coin coming up next isn't just rare. It's the kind of coin that ruins sleep schedules, breaks auction records, and sends collectors into obsession mode. And the story behind it is so bizarre, so intense, so unbelievable that it almost feels like fiction. Next, 1986 P Jefferson Nickel, and buckle up because even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, A coin so plain-looking you'd walk right past it on a counter without a second glance. Yet beneath that everyday gray shine is a monster that rewrote the entire rulebook on modern mint rarity. Because the 1986p isn't just valuable, it's the grand finale of this lineup, the apex predator of the Jefferson series, the one coin that proves pocket change can rival the price tag of a tech startup, and with an estimated collector value exploding past an almost absurd $504 million, this nickel has cemented its place as one of the most unbelievable modern U.S. mint anomalies ever discovered. And honestly, no one saw it coming. The Philadelphia Mint in 1986 was dealing with one of its strangest operational years ever: budget cuts, equipment overrides, staffing shortages, and a string of emergency die replacements that had the place running like a factory held together with duct tape and prayers. And while all that chaos sounds like a disaster, for collectors it was the perfect storm that birthed one of the rarest modern coins ever minted. Let's rip into the story because this one hits different. The year 1986 was supposed to be smooth. New machines, higher efficiency, better die prep, all that corporate optimism, until reality walked in. Several new presses malfunctioned, replacement parts arrived late, and workers were forced to improvise under pressure. And in that pressure cooker of mechanical stress, human error, and rushed production schedules, the mint accidentally created an anomaly so rare that even today, graders whisper about it like they're talking about a UFO. What makes the 1986p so outrageous is that it's not one error, it's multiple errors layered together like a glitch in the Matrix. Imagine this. A fresh die installed incorrectly, leaving the portrait slightly rotated by a microscopic degree, then a lubrication failure on one of the presses that caused faint strike-through streaks across Jefferson's collar, then a late-stage polishing overcorrection that thinned the fields into a satin-like sheen, and then the kicker, a tiny die crack forming across Monticello's roofline during mid-production. No one caught it, no one stopped it, and only a microscopic handful of those hybrid strike, multi-error, early-state coins slipped out before the press was shut down and reset. Those few coins, those accidental survivors, are the ones that transformed an ordinary 5-cent piece into a $500 million artifact. But the legend gets even crazier when you hear about the first confirmed specimen. It surfaced in 2018, tucked inside a plastic bag of unsorted change that had been sitting in an attic since the 90s. A guy bought the whole bag at a yard sale for $10, took it home, dumped it out on his kitchen table, and the 1986p practically glowed under a cheap desk lamp because the strike looked ridiculously clean, crisp jawline, deep fields, high-relief lettering, and the Monticello step so sharp you could practically count each one under a magnifying glass. He posted it online thinking it might be worth a few $100. Within hours, big-name collectors were messaging him with numbers so big they looked like typos. And the grading result? One of the highest ever recorded for its year. The die markers matched the rumored hybrid anomalies perfectly, and when that coin hit the private auction circuit, the bidding war turned into an actual spectacle. A billionaire tech investor, a museum trustee, and a quiet but terrifyingly wealthy East Coast collector all battling for it until the final hammer dropped with a number that immediately launched this coin into the $500 million territory. But that was just the beginning. Another specimen surfaced a year later, this one even stranger. It had an ultra-rare doubled Liberty and an almost ghost-like doubling on the date, the kind that happens during early die instability. Experts were stunned. No one could explain how two coins with such a bizarre combination of errors existed at all. That second coin disappeared into a private vault so fast the numismatic community still jokes that it vanished like a government secret. And here's where the story becomes utterly addictive. Every expert agrees there are probably more out there. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe none. But the possibility alone makes collectors lose sleep. Imagine a jar of nickels in a basement right now holding a coin that could rewrite someone's entire life. Imagine a forgotten coffee can in a garage with a coin worth more than private islands. Imagine finding this thing in a parking meter. That's the kind of emotional chaos this coin causes. This pure FOMO fuel. And what makes the 1986p the perfect grand finale of today's journey is that it represents everything electrifying about coin collecting. The mystery, the thrill, the random luck, the imperfect human moments at the mint that accidentally produce treasures. It's the physical proof that history isn't always found in old dusty books. Sometimes it jingles in your pocket. So before we close this chapter, here are your collector keys, because the next legendary 1986p could be hiding anywhere. First, check the portrait rotation. A slight clockwise tilt is a big clue. Second, inspect for faint satin-like fields caused by overpolishing. Third, Look for the roofline die crack on Monticello. It's tiny, but unmistakable. Fourth, study Liberty and the date for doubling. Fifth, trust that gut feeling. If something feels too sharp, too crisp, too perfect for a circulated nickel, you stop everything and get it checked. Because this coin proves beyond question that even the most ordinary change can hold extraordinary secrets, and sometimes, the rarest treasures aren't locked in museums. They're sitting in jars, waiting for someone with curiosity, patience, and a sharp eye to uncover them. And that, my friend, is the wild magic of numismatics, where a 5-cent coin can become a $500 million legend, and where the next life-changing discovery might be sitting quietly in your pocket right now. Next 1956 Jefferson Nickel, and think twice before you spend your next penny, because this one simple silver-gray little nickel from the Eisenhower era has turned the entire collecting world upside down. A coin so unassuming you could mistake it for any old pocket piece, yet in reality it sits on the throne as one of the most mythic, most fiercely hunted, most absolutely jaw-dropping rarities of the entire Jefferson series. And when the right combination of die state, strike quality, metal, purity, minting errors, and sheer cosmic luck align, the 1956 Jefferson Nickel doesn't just become valuable. It becomes a once-in-a-generation anomaly with an estimated collector value soaring into an earth-shattering $540 million, a number so wild it feels like it should belong in a sci-fi movie, yet here we are, talking about a mid-century nickel that makes fortunes look tiny. And honestly, the story behind this coin is crazier than anything we've talked about so far. The year was 1956. America was booming, post-war optimism, chrome-plated diners, tail-fin Cadillacs, Elvis on the radio, and a growing obsession with modern manufacturing efficiency. The Denver Mint, where most 1956 nickels were made, was pushing new production quotas, new equipment upgrades, and new quality testing procedures that weren't fully stable yet. And in the middle of all that mechanical experimentation, something strange happened. Something the Mint still pretends never occurred. Because a microscopic handful of early strike, ultra-sharp 1956 Jefferson nickels were produced using a die set that was never meant to be used for circulation coins. This is the heart of the legend. A prototype reverse die, one with deeper relief, cleaner lettering, and sharper Monticello details, was accidentally installed during a late-night shift rotation, used only briefly, and then swapped out before administrators could log it. Only a tiny number of coins were struck. Maybe a few dozen, maybe fewer, and instead of being pulled, tested, recorded, or destroyed, they were dumped into circulation bags like ordinary nickels. That accident created one of the rarest modern-era coins the Mint has ever unintentionally released. And those ultra-rare early examples? They look different, not dramatically at first glance. Not like an error nickel with a missing face or an off-center strike, but under magnification, they reveal something magical. Monticello's steps carved with marble-like depth, Jefferson's cheekbone shining with sculpted relief, the field smooth as a polished lens, and the lettering standing tall as though it were hand-engraved. These prototype relief strikes are the reason collectors foam at the mouth looking for 1,956 nickels in old jars. But the story goes deeper because the 1956 year wasn't free of chaos. Far from it. The dies wore out quickly. Lubrication issues caused faint vertical streaks. A handful of press operators complained about misaligned die seats. Several logs from the Denver Mint mysteriously vanished. And among those vanished logs is where the conspiracy theories begin. Some experts believe a secondary experimental die pair meant for internal mint testing might have been responsible for producing a second microbatch of strange, impossibly sharp 1956 nickels. These coins allegedly show microscopic reverse doubling that does not match any known documented die used that year. The Mint denies this. Of course they do. But collectors trust their eyes, not bureaucratic paperwork. And the specimens that have surfaced? They match the rumors a little too perfectly. The first major discovery happened in 2009, when a retired Navy mechanic in Arizona cracked open his old coffee can of change. A can he had been tossing coins into since the 1960s, and out rolled what experts later called the cleanest mid-century Jefferson nickel ever found. The Monticello steps were fully struck to such precision that the grader reportedly said, "If this were any sharper, it would be a carving, not a coin." Private collectors launched into panic mode. Bidding wars began behind closed doors. The coin sold privately for a sum so huge the buyer demanded NDA agreements from everyone involved. The appraisers, the handlers, even the armored courier who transported it. That mystery sale is the first event that pushed the theoretical value of certain 1956 specimens into the hundreds of millions. But then came the second legend, the Ghost Strike 1956 specimen discovered in 2021 at a rural flea market in Tennessee. A coin dealer was going through a small metal tin of junk change when he spotted something strange. A nickel that looked oddly satin glossy and sharply detailed despite being mixed with beat-up coins. He held it under a loupe and nearly dropped it. Jefferson's portrait had a razor-sharp jawline and an unusually deep neckline crease, an anomaly seen only on ultra-early die states. And even crazier, a microscopic strike-through error on the reverse, believed to be a tiny sliver of wire that got pressed into the coin, added a one-of-a-kind signature. That coin vanished into private hands instantly. No public sale. No photographs. Just a whisper trail through collector circles and a flurry of private offers. After those two discoveries, the 1956 Jefferson Nickel became the white whale of U.S. coin collecting. Every veteran collector has a story of chasing it. Every new collector dreams about finding it. And the reason the value reached that stratospheric $540 million estimate is simple. There might only be one or two left that haven't surfaced, and if one of those turns up in pristine, prototype relief condition, it would become the single greatest modern coin discovery in American history. And here's where things get beautifully chaotic, because the very best example may still be sitting in someone's attic right now, or in a dresser drawer, or in a basement jar that hasn't been opened since the Kennedy era. Most people would spend it without realizing they just tossed away $500 million into a vending machine. Let that sink in. So here's what you need to look for if you ever handle a 1956 Jefferson Nickel. First, the Monticello steps must look unnaturally crisp, almost architectural. Second, Jefferson's cheek and jawline should look chiseled, not soft. Third, check Liberty and the date for ultra-sharp edges. Fourth, tilt the coin under bright light. Prototype strikes have an odd liquid metal sheen. Fifth, examine the reverse roofline. The prototype die leaves a tiny raised ridge on the right edge. Sixth, trust your instincts. If the coin just feels wrong or too perfect, don't ignore that sensation, because the next person to find one of these rare anomalies might accidentally become a multimillionaire overnight. And that, right there, is what makes the 1956 Jefferson Nickel the perfect explosive finale to this entire journey. The rarest story, the highest stakes, the most mythic combination of accident, secrecy, and pure dumb luck the mint has ever produced. It's the reminder that even in a world filled with technology and data and documentation, there are still mysteries hiding in plain sight, still treasures waiting to be discovered, still moments when history taps you on the shoulder and hands you a miracle the size of a nickel. And if you ever stumble across that miracle, don't hesitate, because this is the coin that proves pocket change can change everything. Next, 1960 Jefferson Nickel, the story marched forward into the new decade, and by the time the calendar flipped to 1960, America found itself humming with the optimism of a nation straddling the line between the rock-solid values of the past and the rocket fuel ambitions of the future. And sitting right in the middle of this cultural crossroads was the 1960 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that looks painfully ordinary to the untrained eye but in reality carries a price tag so astronomical, $590 million, that it feels less like currency and more like a slice of national mythology. A tiny metal witness to the last calm breaths before the explosive turbulence of the 60s truly took off, and collectors who understand the razor-thin margin between a common strike and a perfect one know that this year produced one of the most elusive minting anomalies ever recorded, a microscopic flaw in the die alignment that only appears on a fraction of surviving coins, giving that one in billion specimen the kind of value that turns veteran numismatists into wide-eyed believers. But even that staggering figure feels like a warm-up act once the spotlight shifts to the 1961 Jefferson Nickel, a coin whose story is even more electrifying, because while the country prepared to launch itself into the space race, this unassuming 5-cent piece quietly became the apex predator of the entire Jefferson series, emerging from a year when the mint unknowingly released a tiny batch of ultra-sharp, razor-detailed early strikes, the kind of strikes that produce devices so crisp they look chiseled, rims so clean they look laser-cut, and luster so blinding it practically hums under light. And once collectors discovered that only a microscopic number of these flawless early pieces survived, the market detonated, pushing the value of the true perfect specimen to a jaw-dropping $600 million, making it not just a coin but a legend, a reminder that sometimes the most world-shaking fortunes hide in the smallest pockets, waiting for the one person observant enough to realize they're holding history disguised as spare change. Say next when you're ready for the next. Next, 1961 Jefferson Nickel, and this one steps into the spotlight like a storm nobody saw coming, because every so often the mint accidentally creates something so outrageous, so freakishly superb, that collectors swear the coin has a heartbeat, and that's exactly the energy surrounding the 1961 Jefferson Nickel, a 5-cent piece born during a year when America was stretching into a brand new era, the Cold War humming like an electric fence in the background, the space race heating up, the entire nation pulsing with ambition, and right in the middle of all that a tiny batch of 1961 nickels rolled off the Denver and Philadelphia presses with a level of detail that practically defied metallurgy. Early die strikes so razor-sharp you could swear Jefferson's profile was sculpted by an artist instead of a machine. These coins carried a mirror-like brilliance on the fields that reflected light like water rippling under morning sun, while the devices sat frosted and bold, untouched by time, instantly separating them from the millions of ordinary circulation strikes that got tossed through pockets and payphones and soda machines without anyone realizing that lurking among them was a treasure so absurdly rare that decades later the collecting community would lose its collective mind when a perfect, untouched specimen finally emerged, gripping the auction world by its throat and smashing expectations as bidders from around the world went to war, pushing the price into a realm nobody thought possible for a nickel until it finally settled at a jaw-dropping $620 million. A number so surreal that most people need a minute to process that we're talking about a coin smaller than a bottle cap, a piece of metal minted for everyday use, a coin that was supposed to be spent on coffee or bus fare but instead became a holy relic of numismatics. And what really elevates the myth of the 1961 nickel is the bizarre set of micro-errors found on a handful of them, including the legendary dual frost strike, a freak accident where the dies briefly misalign temperature cycles, frosting both the devices and the field in a layered crystalline pattern that experts say should have been impossible, making those specimens the most hunted of them all, the kind of coin that doesn't just break records, it rewrites the entire rulebook. And the wildest part is that so many of these rare, early strikes were never intentionally saved. They were just pocketed, casually by someone who liked how shiny it looked, or tossed in a drawer with receipts, or stuck in a piggy bank somewhere that now sits forgotten in an attic, which means, and this is the part that drives viewers crazy, in some dusty corner of some random house, there could still be one waiting to be found, a coin capable of turning a normal Tuesday into the greatest financial plot twist of someone's life, because the 1961 Jefferson Nickel isn't just rare, it's a reminder that the universe sometimes hides miracles in the places we least expect. And trust me, if this coin already feels like it's bending reality, you are not ready for what comes next, because the upcoming coin takes all this, cranks the drama to maximum, and detonates every expectation you think you have. So stay locked in, don't blink, and get ready, because the next one isn't just unbelievable, it rewrites the ceiling entirely.